I was always like, getting myself into all sorts of trouble because I was just by myself. I was taking things. My mouth was out of control. I would never stop talking. I was claiming that I drank gasoline to kids. I was like, yeah, it's gasoline. And they would tell their parents that I drank gasoline. And then I wasn't allowed at houses. So it was all this, it was just like calamity. And um, so this other part of the family, which ends up being the Irish part, the big Irish part of the family, comes to visit. And so I realized I got aunts and uncles that are like the same age as me. And so we're at this hotel and we're playing, we're having this great, great, great time, swimming in the pools, all these people. I'm like, wow, we have all this family. And then they went home, but they were, they were not happy about, this was the old man side of the family, right? Um, then they left. And then I remember I was in the backyard of this house and there were these walkie-talkies. And I was like, look at these walkie-talkies. These are so cool. I opened up the back and it was that old computer panel. Like, I guess it wasn't even a computer back then, but whatever. It had all the wires and all the little blue pieces. And I was just twisting wires off, taking them all apart. And the big kids showed up whose walkie-talkies they were. And I was caught red-handed with and I was going to die, I thought. This is it for me. So I'm like going like, and I get home and I call my grandmother Mimi, and she would visit once in a while in Canada. Man, I loved her. I was the first grandchild, and I used to save her pennies and stuff, give her envelopes of pennies. But I went back to the house like pale as a ghost, like, this is it. I'm going to meet my maker. I finally, these kids are going to beat me to death. And I went in and they were just like, hey, guess what? We're moving back to where Mimi is. We're going back to where Mimi's house. And I was like, oh my Lord. I was like so excited to get out of there because I just figured it was all going to change when we got to Mimi's, is what I thought. So we packed up and we drove from, I think that we were in Toronto at the time because we ended up, so that Canada tour took us through Toronto, Winnipeg, Quebec, and Montreal is where we went. And those years of touring and of being evicted and just living like gypsies. And man, I remember my mom was splitting eggs between me and my brother, like one egg. And man, it was a time for sure. It was a time that really ended up shaping my opinion of so many things and how I was going to behave. But it was like almost, I realized that I was dedicated to this outward performance of myself, that how I was going to get things, nobody was going to get them for me. And also that, I had all of this courage and I had all of this bravado at this young age, but it was slowly being extracted from me by the men in my life. And I'm going to encounter more men in my life that my mother brings in that are basically, it feels like they're dedicated to extracting any type of masculinity or courage that I might have in order to, I don't know. In a lot of cases, it seemed like just to be with my mom. So we headed back to the States and ended up on the South Shore of Massachusetts, where the story continues.